Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I good? Yes? Great. So I'm Kate Rosenshine. I head up a team of cloud solution architects focusing on data and AI at Microsoft. We have very, very long titles. But basically, what me and my team do every day is work with customers across financial services to help them understand end-to-end from their data all the way through to AI. And I am a scientist by training, so I am actually a neurobiologist by training. I was just saying earlier that had I studied a bit later in life, I would have been a data scientist officially, but not the case. So I'm going to talk today about a bit about AI, some key considerations, but I'm also going to sort of focus a bit on what this all means, and hopefully I can do that all in 15 minutes, so come with me on this journey. So the first thing is, what is actually AI? So if you ask, if I ask the audience, I'll probably get as many answers as there are people here. But fundamentally, AI is not just about the technology. It's become more and more about the business that sits around it, the social implications, and the politics of it as well. And when we talk about AI, we're talking about machines understanding from large sets of data, reasoning with that, and then interacting with humans in more natural ways. Now, when we talk about machines that are thinking, they're not actually thinking in the way that humans think, and it's important to remember that. These algorithms are basically fed large amounts of data that we create into algorithms that iterate on themselves to get a result that is for a goal that we define. So as we go through this, that's something that's very important to remember. And what's interesting is actually AI has been around for a while. I like to read the New York Times, and I was just browsing it on a weekend, as you would. Just, I don't know even what I was searching for. But one article here is from 1985, where Ford acquired a stake in artificial intelligence. The other one is from 2017. So AI has been around since the 50s, when the term was first coined. And ever since then, there's been AI springs, where AI just seemed to be the next big thing to solve everything, followed by AI winters, where the technology just seemed to be stuck. Right now, we're experiencing another spring in this technology due to the rise of cheap compute, large amounts of data. If we think of the data that we're now creating while sitting here in this room, just listening, that's insane. And that created a better use for algorithms that actually existed for a while. So the algorithms improved as well. So now we're in the perfect storm of having actual value from AI that can scale and be a lot more accessible. But when we think about AI and society, and when we ask people, this is a survey we recently did, and I kind of love this. So where did you hear about AI? Like, how do you know about this term? So 56% of people learn about AI from entertainment. So to the Will Smith slide before, I guess that's what people think when they think AI. And another 27% from newspapers or TV. So I think as a society, where we hear about AI comes from the media. So I think that needs to sort of be understood in terms of expectations, and also a bit about why there are some fears in this technology. Obviously, if you saw the robots before, that's kind of terrifying. So AI can be used for very good things. So this is just one use of AI in the media. AI helping refugees find better lives by finding them jobs. What better cause than that? But it can also eliminate bad hair days. I know that's also quite a worthy cause. And I'm just going a bit fast, so I only have 15 minutes to cover a lot, so apologies. But when we speak about technology, especially as it's a very loaded term right now, it's important to remember the responsibility that we have as AI practitioners with this technology. And I don't like the word ethics so much because then it becomes very meta, and what does that even mean? But I think responsibility is something that us as a society, organizations, and government can come to an agreement, especially when we think about global organizations, which today most organizations have that global reach. And when we think about the responsibility that comes with creating these AI systems, this is us at Microsoft. This is a framework that we use. I know there are other companies with very, very similar frameworks that they have published. But when we talk about the responsibility that comes with it, we speak about 6 key considerations. I'm going to unpack some of these concepts today and talk a bit about the transparency and accountability that come with these systems. I could, talk about this for ages, but I'll leave a bit for some other time. So I'm going to start with a short video, and hopefully the technology will cooperate, and if it doesn't, I'll just tell you about it. So this is a show called All in the Family. I don't know if that's a known television series here in the UK, but it was very big in America in the 70s. I grew up in Canada. Everything comes to Canada about 10 years later. But it's a show about a family living in New York with a very opinionated dad. I think it's kind of shocking to look back at it and watch it. But can we get the clip to play now? I just click it?
Okay,
there we go.
All I'm saying is no self-respecting American husband to do his own sewing.
Oh, what about Dr. Nelson, the surgeon? He does a lot of sewing.
On people, Edith. He sews on people.
Well, he must have practiced on something before he started. That reminds me, Gloria, you were going to tell me something about a surgeon and you never finished.
Well, yeah, that was the riddle that Tammy Robinson told me. I bet you'll never guess it.
Who's Tammy Robinson?
Oh, she's the girl that's running the female fair exhibition down at the store. She's coming over here this morning so we can work on it.
Oh, what's she coming over here? But can't we have a Sunday in this house with no visitors? What a day this is going to be. And look at that rain out there, Edith.
Well, I'm sorry, Archie.
Daddy, you got her saying she's sorry like it's her fault it's raining.
Well, it ain't my fault.
Well, tell us about the riddle.
Okay. Now, you see, there's this father and his son, and they're driving along in a car. And the car crashes, and the father is killed.
Oh, that's so sad.
Oh, jeez, it's only a story.
Anyway, the father is killed, and the little boy is badly injured. So they rush him to a hospital, take him into the operating room. The surgeon walks in and says, I can't operate on this boy. He's my son. How come?
All right, so who's heard this one before? Yes, so it's the mother. I got this wrong the first time. I was like, okay, one is the adoptive father and one is the biological father. And shockingly, I showed this to some of our interns who never saw it before, and they were initially thinking the same thing. So why am I showing you this clip? I think it's really important to remember that we are the ones that create our data, and our culture has a big impact on that. So if we think about how we sort of classify people, it's or things in general, it's a product of our society, and our society is shaped by our time and our current political state, and also by our geography. So in this video, you would have heard a lot of priming, to sort of show that gender balance. And that's why a lot of times people will make that sort of mental shortcut to say, aha, of course it's, two fathers, rather than the more, like the easier thing to think about, which, it's the mother. So going to that, and that's fundamentally how our data is created. Spending a bit of time on classification. So does anyone know this scene here? So this is Plato and Aristotle. And Aristotle was the first person to start classifying things that's on record. And he started classifying nature. In classification, is something that we as humans do. And like I said, that can change over time, right? So we classify our data like we saw before in the clip. Someone decided that that was, person smiling. That was pretty benign. But when we think of other forms of classification or other ways we classify our data, we need to be very conscious that that feeds into then what we go and then use for AI systems. And this is just to demonstrate that, how culture leaves its thumbprint on everything that we touch, really. This is a research that was published, I think, last year, last year, sorry, we're in 2019. And what they did is scrape words to see what words are associated with females, right? And this wasn't obvious sort of descriptions, it was using language to see how females were described and how that changes over time. So we see even for how we describe females, that went from charming and delicate to morbid in the 1990s. I don't know what happened there, morbid and artificial. So that's one thing that's super important to remember. AI systems are not very smart. They will learn whatever we teach them. And what about the men? Well, the men are not so much better off. This is a data set for actions, right? And what they did is that they used scene from movies to see what people do. And apparently men, you guys are going around karate chopping and kicking things all the time. So this is just the data set that came up for a person getting hit or person hitting something. So I think that's also important to remember. We talk a lot about gender and female representation, but I think it's how we view just society in general. That is something to be very aware of with AI systems. So fundamentally, the bias in the data, and when we talk about biased AI systems, is not the actual AI system, it's us. It's our society and our human biases. And this is a very, an example that has been showed a lot. It's how facial recognition isn't very good unless you're a white male. And it also shows job searches. So if you just search doctor, you're going to see about a bunch of white men in lab coats. And that changes over time. So you will see that if you search, these algorithms are constantly being optimized, but it's also how we view society. And we talk a lot about humans and the role of humans in AI systems, especially with the future of work, which we will touch on later. But one of the phenomena that come with AI systems and as they enter our lives is automation bias. Now, this term was first coined by Dr. Joseph Weizenbaum in the 1960s. And Joseph Weizenbaum came up with the first chatbot called Eliza. And Eliza was a psychotherapist chatbot in the 1960s, so the conversations were very interesting. This is just one example of it. Eliza says, "Is something troubling you? Men are all alike. What is the connection, do you suppose? They're always bugging us about something or other." So great system. This was the 1960s. It wasn't very smart. It was just replaying what people were asking. But people started to get delusioned into thinking these systems were actually real. And they would have conversations with Eliza as if this was a real human entity. And Joseph Weizenbaum was very disturbed by this phenomenon. And 10 years later, he wrote a big paper about it, coining the term automation bias. And us as humans, we have a tendency to think that what comes from an intelligent system or from data or from a computer is actually smarter than us. A lot of times that's not the case, and there is a need for constant human oversight, especially when we take AI systems and integrate them into processes that might have greater risk. So there is that constant need to keep the humans in the loop as these systems are being built. So just to wrap things off, I think diversity, and we talk a lot about that, is even more and more important as more and more people are creating these systems. It's not only diversity of gender, I think it's diversity in terms of thought, in terms of social economic status, because once these systems are created, it just supercharges everything that's being fed into them. So I know there are a lot of stories of AI systems that don't actually take into account the people that they're actually trying to serve. So really, when you start creating these systems, you should have your workforce that's working on it sort of mirror the people you're actually trying to create value for. So with that, I'm done. Hopefully that was on time and I was all good. Thank you. I know I could have talked for much longer, but thank you for having me. And I'm going to introduce Brian now for the panel.